So today we are answering the question, are we living in an alien simulation? Is it fact or fiction? There are actually a lot of people who believe this, and it's becoming kind of popular, especially with all the strange occurrences that have been happening lately. So we're going to answer this question, is it possible that an advanced alien race has created some sort of simulation in which we have now evolved and are experiencing through the consciousness of this digital pixelated reality? So is it true? Is it real? That's what we're answering today. And so we're going to explore this question by taking a look first at this article on iai.tv. And they have fantastic articles. I definitely recommend checking them out. But it says here, the idea that we're living in a simulation has become commonplace. Elon Musk, for example, thinks it's almost certain that we're living in a simulation. See, that's you have people who are very big in the public eye, such as Elon Musk, who think that it's certain that we are living in a simulation. But we're gonna see, is that true? Now, when we think in terms of how humanity understands reality to be right now, it seems almost like an inevitable consequence. Because if you believe that if you believe that reality is material and only material, and that there's no metaphysical or inner element or mental element to it, that mind is ultimately something that's derived from matter, that it's an epiphenomenon of the mind, or that the mind is equivalent with the brain, then it would make sense that you would be able to create something physical that would give rise to consciousness. But the issue here is that humans are projecting their very limited ideas of what reality is, and also what aliens want. So we're going to be taking a look at, what aliens are, what they want, and would they be interested in creating a simulation? Is this something that they would do? So, the article continues, the matrix of our shared reality is glitching given the absurdity of current events. It sometimes feels as though some time traveler from the future, or perhaps an alien kid, is fooling around with the fabric of society. Could we really be mere pawns in the hands of some sadistic virtual game player? And I think that that's something that we can relate to. I mean, reality is getting stranger and stranger, but that is a good thing. And I don't think that it's something that should be shied away of. I think it's great that reality is getting stranger and stranger, because the weirder and weirder it gets, the more people will have to face the weirdness and stop what they're doing and realize, hey, you know what? Maybe we should stop arguing about whose sky god is the best, or getting mad at each other for what color skin we have, and realize, hey, something weird's going on. What is this existence thing? What is this reality thing? What's going on here? Where are we? What are we? Why are we here? And in a real true way, not in the sort of brainwashed way that religions have imposed upon people, or other systems of institutions of brainwashing. So it says here, to most people trying to make a living, pay bills, or fight an illness, spending time considering that our reality is not the real thing, but actually a highly sophisticated simulation, sounds ridiculous. See, this is interesting. So, this is really interesting, because this is kind of the opposite of my position, but I agree to a certain extent. So, this is quote, I wish smart people would focus on real world problems instead of this nonsense, someone close to me recently said. And this is interesting. So basically what the author of this article, who wrote this, by the way, this is Marcelo Gleiser. So go give them a follow. Go check them out on iai.tv if you like some of the excerpts that we're reading here. But anyway, so Marcelo is saying, so the people who are just trying to make a living and pay bills or fight an illness, they don't have time to think about if this reality is real or not. And they wish that smart people would focus on, real world problems rather than thinking about this, alien simulation nonsense. And so, see, this is where, I agree yet disagree. So what I said before, it would seem like I would disagree with that, because I'm basically saying, hey, people need to focus on the strangeness of this reality, not necessarily the alien simulation hypothesis, but need to focus on what existence is, why we're here, what's going on, rather than mundane issues. But I agree with the frustration of this person Because one of the major issues that is a roadblock to reaching a higher consciousness, reaching hyper awareness, is capitalism. So, what are the major roadblocks? Religion, scientific materialism, and capitalism. These are the three huge obstacles keeping humanity away from reaching a higher consciousness. Religion's pretty self-explanatory, tells you you're worthless and sinful and nothing. Scientific materialism says that reality is material and that's it. So you're just a random accident. You're going to die and be dust. You're gone. And then capitalism reduces you to a product, to a number, to what can be bought and sold. And it keeps you so busy in this rat race of a world that you are way too distracted to be able to have time to think about what this reality is, to truly develop and integrate yourself, to so this person, you know, is I understand where they're coming from, but that's one of the things that needs to change in this reality, is that we need to build a world where it's not focused on how much money one makes or the bottom line, but rather on quality of life. See, this world is so backwards. Right now, quality of life is suffering so that people can make money. We should be using money to increase people's quality of life. And this reality is incredibly backwards. So it's a very shitty simulation, let me tell you. So I understand where this person is coming from. So despite being a scientist that uses computer simulations on my research, I sympathize with this. It's way too convenient to blame our current mess on powers beyond our control. In fact, this sort of not my fault sounds a lot like the religious it's God's will, etc., etc. So, of course, philosophers who consider such problems, like that reality could be a simulation, do so because they are interesting per se and raise questions about the nature of reality and our perception in it. They are interested in telling what's real from what's not, or whether that's even possible. Surprisingly, the more you think about the simulation question, the harder it is to answer. For example, what you see of the world before and after 3 pints of beer changes. Some cultures see a tree as a spirit and others as an irrelevant chunk of wood to burn as fuel. Which world is the real one? And so this is what we talk about in our system, the neogenian system, we call reality tunnels. Now, reality tunnels, you know, comes from a bunch of different sources. Robert Anton Wilson is really famous for popularizing it. But anyway, what reality tunnels basically says is that all of us exist in our own reality. Not literally, objectively, we all exist in the same reality, but we all interpret it based on our reality tunnels. And our reality tunnels is basically everything that contributes to our perception of existence and our conception of existence. So these are paradigms, schemas, every way that we interpret data and information. So it's a network of paradigms and schemas, ways of interpreting and categorizing information. So there are some people who are in the Christian reality tunnel, some people who are in the atheist reality tunnel, some people who are in the Buddhist reality tunnel. So everyone will see reality completely different. So some people will see a tree as the creation of God. Another person might see it as Maya, illusion, right? The Christian reality tunnel says, oh, it's a creation of God. The Hindu reality tunnel says, oh, that's Maya, it's an illusion. And the atheist materialist reality tunnel goes, oh no, it's simply a collection of material atoms. And so we all inhabit very different worlds, and we make choices and actions based on our reality tunnels. That's why it's important to make sure that you have the right understanding of what existence is. And that's why our system, the neogenian system, is about understanding existence from a meta-rationalist perspective. That is, understanding reality rationally and logically, and understanding that metaphysics can be understood rationally and logically. So we synthesize reason and intuition. We have the power of, having these metaphysical intuitions grounded in reason, where reason conditions and filters and knits together these ideas into a coherent structure. So essentially, we want to be able to rigorously understand our reality, both physically and metaphysically, rationally and logically, while acknowledging the power of intuition. So let's see. So the simulation question started with a 2003 paper by Nick Bostrom. Bostrom reasoned compellingly that given our own proficiency with computers and virtual reality, one of the four following propositions must be true. Okay, so if you ever wondered about simulation theory and wondered if we are living in an alien simulation, here's where it all came from, and here are the four following propositions. Or I'm sorry, how many are there? Three following propositions, one that must be true. Okay, 1, the human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. 2, any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history or variations thereof. Or 3, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. So what does all this mean? Okay, so according to the article here, in other words, so basically one of these things must be true, according to this hypothesis. Either we disappear, we go extinct, or our successors run simulations, or they don't run simulations. If they do run simulations, Bostrom claims that their simulations will likely include the one we call reality today. Bostrom's point is that if our species survives the transition to a new post-human phase, the new us will have unimaginable computational powers, and running realistic simulations will be a given. If this is the case, we in the present would be like characters in a super advanced Sims game, convinced that we have autonomy when in fact we are puppets in the hands of game players. So the idea basically is that the argument in a simplified form goes, hey, at some point, if a species reaches a certain level of sophistication and they build a simulation of reality, then it's very likely that we are in one of those simulations. So the argument is basically saying that it's that according to their theory, there's a very, 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 very high likelihood that we are in a simulation. Why? Because they believe that at some point a species developed the ability to simulate realities, and that they would do it in order to, for a number of different reasons, like understanding existence. Like, oh, let's simulate a reality and then study it and see what we can learn from it. So basically the argument is that it's likely that an advanced species developed the ability to simulate reality and was interested in doing so for research purposes. And if that's the case, then it's very likely that we are in one of those simulated realities, because it's likely that that already occurred and that those simulations are running. But is that true? Is this sound? Does it make sense? Well, we'll find out in a minute. Okay, so here is one of the issues. It says one glitch in the simulation argument is that there is nothing to stop the simulation at one super advanced post-human or alien species. It could very well be that our simulators are, for their part, simulated by even more advanced simulators, which brings us to the age-old problem in philosophy: who was the first simulator? Okay, so if you are trying to use the simulation hypothesis to explain reality, it doesn't explain reality. Because basically it says this: if you're trying to understand what existence is, I always have to make sure my microphone is on. Sorry, my microphone plug is very, very loose, and sometimes if I bump it, wait, what is that? I ordered something. My package was here. What was I saying? Okay. If you are trying to use the simulation hypothesis to explain reality, it doesn't explain anything. If you go, what is existence? What is this place? Why does it seem like it follows a certain rule set, a certain structure? How come we can't go faster than light? What is this? And you go, oh, well, I can explain existence. Existence is actually a simulation. Well, here's the problem with that, is that you can have an infinite regress of simulations then. If you're in a simulation by an alien species, then that species could also be in a simulation, and then that species could also be in a simulation. So you could think about if we're in a simulation, we might get to a certain level where we create our own simulation, and then that species in the simulation we create will create their own simulation. So in other words, you can get this infinite regress of simulations, and so the problem then becomes, well, what happens when you get to base reality? What happens when you get to the actual real reality? What happens when you get to the first simulator? What happens when you get to the reality that isn't simulated? Because if this is a simulated reality, you would have to eventually get to some existence that wasn't simulated, that was real. And so then the question is, well, what is that reality? What is, like, how does that reality exist? So it's important to see that the simulation hypothesis does not explain existence. Some people try to use it to explain existence. What is existence? Ah, it's a simulation. Okay, but what about the real world then? What is that? And they can't answer that. So my Google Assistant is making noise again. So that simulated reality it leads to another simulated reality. You eventually have to explain what the real world is. And so this is the thing that humans do a lot, is that they just move the question one level back because, oh, it's a simulation. Well, what about the real reality? Oh, well, that's like beyond their conceptual reach. They're not going to go that far. It's kind of like, oh, well, what created, how do we exist? Oh, God created us. Well, what created God? How does God exist? Well, don't mind that. Don't pay attention to that part of it. So the simulation hypothesis doesn't explain reality. That's what's important to realize. Another one, it says that Bostrom's argument relies on the assumption that advanced post-human intelligences will have an interest in simulating a reality. Why would they exactly? Could we really presume to have any insight to their psychology or motivations? So basically, the argument here is why would they do this? It says, being so advanced, they would have collected enough knowledge about their past to have little interest in this kind of simulation. And that forward-looking would probably be much more interesting to them. So basically, they're saying, why would an alien species be interested in doing this? They're probably if they're at the advanced level enough where they can simulate a reality, they probably know enough about existence to not need to simulate reality and be much more interested in the future. Now, here is what I would say. And in my opinion, this is really the strength of it. So what the simulation theory also hinges on is a materialist understanding of reality. So the materialist conception of reality is that you build an existence, or rather we have evolved materially, and that the brain has evolved, and that the brain is synonymous with the mind. That the brain is the mind. And the mind is sort of an illusion. The mind is dependent on matter. That consciousness evolves out of matter. So they kind of look at it in the same way with simulation theory. They go, oh, well, you just build complex enough code, eventually consciousness will emerge. Just like, oh, you have a complex enough matter through evolution, eventually consciousness will emerge. This is impossible. Mind cannot emerge from matter. This is a philosophical, logical impossibility. There is no possible way that interiority can emerge from exteriority. And there are, I could really do an entire, I think I've done entire videos about this before, but it is a logical impossibility. There is no way that mind can emerge from matter. Subjectivity is not something that can emerge from an object that has no inherent interiority within it. In fact, it's a lot more than that. Interiority, subjectivity, is actually not something that can be created in any way. Subjectivity is eternal. So we understand that reality is frequency, reality is energy, and reality is mind, and reality is subjective mind. Reality is mind that operates on objective rules, but these objective rules give rise to minds that are sentient. So we are eternal systems of frequencies. You could call them souls. We call them zetas because they are infinite systems of energy that void to zero. It's one infinite fullness that results in zero. Mathematically speaking, this is what a zeta is. So this is what we are. And we we are subjective sentient beings, and we are mind. We are frequencies, we are energy, and energy is not something that can be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. Same thing with consciousness, okay? That's very important to understand. Consciousness, really mind, is energy, and it cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. You as a mind, you as consciousness are constantly transforming and moving and changing and growing, but you as a consciousness, as a mind, as a zeta, can never be destroyed. You can exist in a state of identity. You can exist in different states, but you can never be destroyed. Your subjective experience will never vanish. It will never disappear. It will only change forms and change qualities. It will never disappear. So subjectivity is not something that can be created. Subjectivity is not something that can emerge out of matter if matter is defined as something that has no interiority to it. And the only, it's an absolutely, if you really take a second to really think about it critically and logically and really examine it, you'll see how crazy it is. The only reason why it's not seen as crazy is because people have been brainwashed, since birth that, oh, the brain is the mind, the brain is the mind, the brain is the mind. No, the brain is not the mind. The reason why the brain and the mind share a correlation is because the brain acts as an interface for the mind. So you as a Zetic mind, as an eternal system of frequencies, as a non-local entity, use the brain and nervous system and the body to interface with the material world and have a localized experience. So you can think of the brain and the body sort of like a virtual reality headset. The brain and the body allow you to experience a world. A virtual reality headset allows you to experience a world. But you are not the VR headset, and you are not the brain and the body. You are a mind that is receiving information and stimuli from signals being sent to you, space-time signals being sent to you as a being of frequency through the brain, through the body, through the nervous system to give you this tactile experience, this subjective experience, this localized experience in this world that we inhabit. So simulation hypothesis presupposes that code can generate consciousness in mind. Code cannot generate consciousness in mind. It cannot. Code is not something that has the capacity to generate consciousness in mind. Now, there is the question in a completely different paradigm, could you build a virtual model of a world that was so sophisticated that you could get a mind to link to it? And that is open for debate. The reason why I think that would be unlikely is, okay, so first of all, before we get into that, there's the question of, would aliens even want to do this? So if we're talking about a level of being that has the capacity to simulate realities, all right? this is beyond a physical entity at this point. This capacity to simulate. I mean, you could simulating a universe is no easy task. So what we talk about in our system is you're going to get to a level where a mind realizes how to create its own frequency domain. And you have a mind that's able to create its own frequency domain, a collective of minds. In other words, we will understand how to manipulate the frequencies of reality in such a way that we will literally be able to create our own universe. We won't have to simulate our universe on some PC. I'm just kidding. I know it wouldn't be a PC, but I'm joking, because it'd just be very, very glitchy. But you get what I'm saying. It wouldn't be hardware based. We would be able to actually create a universe. And that's a new domain, a new dimension, what we call a CFD, or collective frequency domain. It's a new domain. And minds would have the capacity, Zetic minds, Zetas would have the capacity to create, will have, at that level of consciousness, the ability to create their own universe. And so this just opens up a plethora of issues here. They wouldn't. It's highly unlikely that they would be creating a virtual world that's simulated in the way that we think of things. It would be just, I don't know. It would be kind of the equivalent of people, 1,000 years ago, thinking that computers are made from cranks and levers. For us to think that they would create a digital simulated reality is unlikely. There's one caveat to that. Of course, all this, in the span of the limited time that I have here to explore all different avenues, there is a possibility that digital reality... there is a possibility that lines can get kind of blurry at some point, but that's really diving into the specifics of things and getting into some very highly speculative areas. That's beyond the scope of this video. But staying in the generalities here. What beings of that level are interested in is not running simulations to explore their past better. What beings at that level are likely interested in is seeing our growth and development. So the only reason why they would want to, and we're talking about, let's just restrict our talk to benevolent entities right now, because I don't want to get into negative entities, because I want to keep this as simple as possible. But benevolent entities, okay, so let's say they wanted to create a domain for us to localize in that would be better for our growth. Like, oh, let's create a more healthy universe to have their minds localize in this universe rather than the Holos, rather than Earth. This raises a number of problems. So one of the problems that this raises is it seems likely that minds inherently have a binary tuning function. So, and the reason why is it's because the tuning function that they tune into is very, very simple. So this reality that we exist in right now is not a physical reality, it's a reality of frequencies. Because it's a reality of frequencies, you can tune into this frequency domain. I mean, it's a space-time domain, but it's still based on a frequency domain. So you have two tuning abilities. It's binary. You can tune into this waking world that we all inhabit right now, or your personal dream world. And it's very basic. And likely the reason why that minds start off with this binary function, or at least are binary at the point that we are in, is because it's very, very simple. It's either everything or one thing. It's either the self or the all. Because this reality is the collective reality formed from all our frequencies. Your dream reality are your frequencies. So either you're tuned into yourself or everything. It's very, very simple. If you were to tune into a domain hosted by a group of other Zedic minds, a Zedic configuration that is hosted by other minds, it would be likely that you would have to tune into a very specific pattern. And it would open up the question is, that might not be possible. What I mean by that is it might not be possible to create a universe where Zedic minds at our level can tune into, because we don't have that function yet. We don't have the function to tune into a specific domain. We simply have the function to tune into the all or ourselves. Now, at a certain level, will we reach that level where we can tune into others? Yes, and we can kind of get glimpses of that through like psychedelic experiences like DMT or deep meditative states that could be those things. Remember, don't do anything dangerous or illegal. But those are possibilities. But for the most part, it might not be possible. It might be kind of like trying to get a fish to go on land. It's just not capable of doing that. It may be the case that even if they create avatars that could host a Zedic mind, we would have to be able to tune into that very specific pattern. And if that is possible or not, that's an open question. It's kind of like we at some point may be able to develop avatars, new avatars for ourselves, but we would need to be able to develop the ability to, localize with those avatars. So, for example, if we create, so in our concept of reality, it's very, very unlikely. So in our model of existence, AI is not something that can become conscious. If it ever did become conscious, we would need to update and alter portions of our model, likely to represent more of a panpsychist view. But AI cannot become conscious. The only way it could seem as though AI becomes conscious is if a Zedic mind actually linked to a AI system and used that AI system as an interface. So it would seem like the AI is conscious, but it wasn't actually. It would be an interface for a Zedic mind. So in that case, in the Holos, we would have potentially maybe created an avatar for a Zedic mind to perhaps be able to link to. Now, minds that are in a different domain aren't in the Holos, so they would be creating avatars that Zedic minds would have to have a very specific frequency tuned into to be able to access, because it wouldn't be in the Holos, it'd be in a different domain. I'm getting way too complicated, more complicated than I need to be. Okay, long story short. The simulation theory, first of all, explains nothing about existence, because it doesn't explain what the base reality is, what the actual reality is. It puts the question of what existence is just a step further and doesn't answer that step. So it explains nothing about existence. Second of all, it presupposes a materialist ideology in that it presupposes that code can become conscious. Code cannot become conscious. So the only way something like that could happen is if a Zedic mind, a Zeta, were actually establishing a link to some kind of avatar host. But that also seems highly unlikely, because it seems like it would require a highly conscious mind to be able to tune into that. But the whole point would be to create an environment for minds of a lower consciousness to try and help them evolve. So it doesn't seem like that would work. Now, of course, remember, we're getting to levels of pretty high speculation at this point, because we're extrapolating pretty far into the future. But so the point is, do we live in an alien simulation? It's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely. First of all, it explains nothing. So if you're looking for explanatory power, it doesn't matter. Pushing that aside, is it possible in any capacity? It's highly unlikely, because code cannot become conscious, and it comes with the extreme difficulty of why would these beings do this, and how would they get Zedic minds to be able to interact in their domain that they have created that is outside the holos at this point. Now, if we were talking about an alien race that existed in the holos and created technologies like this, that would be a little more in the realm of possibility. But then you get to the idea of, if you're at such a high level where you're literally able to simulate a reality, you're probably starting to there's just so many problems with it, and it's just so highly unlikely. So basically what it boils down to is, first of all, it explains nothing. We know that for sure. Second of all, it's extremely unlikely. And third of all, ultimately it doesn't matter. Because if we were, all right, let's just say we were. It's highly unlikely that we are, but let's just say we were. If we were, it wouldn't be because, our code in the game became conscious and we're actually slaves, and that we're just actually like Sims. Because that's the idea. The idea is that we would just be like Sims, where we're following our code and we just think that we have free will, but we're really just computer code and we don't have free will. That's not the case. Even if we were in some kind of simulation, it wouldn't be like that. We would be Zedic minds that linked to some code configuration and use that as an interface. So we would still have free will, meaning that we could still use that environment to grow, learn, and evolve, just like what we're doing here. And we could transcend that domain, and we wouldn't be trapped there forever. See, that's the thing with the alien simulation hypothesis. Is like, we don't have any free will. We're trapped in this code, and if they shut down the computer code, we're just all dead. We can't escape. We're trapped in the simulation. Oh my God. No. First of all, extremely highly unlikely, but even if it were, it's not that scenario. We would be Zedic minds or souls, or whatever term you would like to use, patterns of frequency that are simply using that code configuration or whatever frequency configuration. If it was a frequency configuration, we'd be using it to interface in that domain, and we'd still be able to learn, grow, and explore and transcend and access the actual real reality, access the frequency domains, and not be connected to that domain. And so ultimately it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter, because the whole point is to grow, learn, and explore. And if we happened to be connected to a simulated one, it would still be to grow, learn, and explore, because we would have the capacity to evolve as minds and transcend and connect to other realities and other domains and create our own reality and create our own domain. So in a nutshell, it explains nothing. It's highly unlikely, and it's just a mess. It's really nothing to worry about, nothing to be concerned about. What really matters is our growth and evolution. Now, the reason why it seems like a simulation is because this is a mathematical reality. It's a reality of frequency patterns, which are essentially mathematical patterns, and frequency patterns which are defined by simply information relating to itself. That's what a frequency is, just information relating to itself in a certain way. And so it's information. It's living information. It's not dead information like a code. Make that very clear. Formally, it's like a code, but it's also living. It has a qualitative aspect, this subjective element, which is eternal. So in a nutshell, it seems like reality is a simulation because it runs on a code. That's why some people think it's like a simulation. Other people think it's like a dream. Other people think it's like a hologram, because it's all these things. It's a mathematical reality that projects itself as a hologram through wave interference pattern, but it's an internal hologram, thus it's like a dream. So it's all those things. It's a mathematical holographic dream. It's like that story of the blind man and the elephant. One person feels the one blind man feels the trunk and says the elephant's like a snake. Another feels the leg and says it's like a tree. The other feels the tail and goes, oh no, it's like a rope. Another feels the ear and goes, oh, it's like a blanket. They're all arguing about each other. It's like, no, arguing about which one is right. It's like, no, it's all those things. Reality is a mathematical holographic dream. That's what it is, and that's why it feels like it could be a simulated reality. But it's not. It's highly, highly unlikely. Doesn't explain anything. We already know. It's highly, highly unlikely. Doesn't explain anything. But it's not. It's highly, highly unlikely. Doesn't explain anything. We already know. It's highly, highly unlikely. Doesn't explain anything. We already know. We already know. what's very likely about how reality works through meta-rationalism, which has much more explanatory power than a simulated reality, and explains the base reality, and explains quite a lot. And yeah, so don't worry. You're not a sim. You have free will. You have autonomy. You are a self-determining, deterministic system. You are a Zedic mind with the power to form what you will. So I hope you enjoyed that, my friends. This was a members only video. I release one members only video every single month. So maybe you'll see this, maybe you won't. I don't know, but a big shout out to everyone who does support. I appreciate it very much, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Enki, Nuselina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Masam, and Ryan. And everyone else. Thank you very much.